Okay, well, welcome to the South Central Partnership for Energy Efficiency as a Resource. This webinar is sponsored by the City Efficiency Leadership Council, as well as State Energy Conservation Office. I'm Sean Auckland, I'm the Local Government Program Manager at SPEAR, and I'll be moderating this webinar. The webinar is there's my reminder timer. The webinar is utilizing technology to validate better buildings at energy efficiency. I'm pretty excited about today and what we'll be learning. So a little bit about SPEAR before we move forward is SPEAR is one of 6 regional energy efficiency organizations in the nation. And we cover the state of Texas and Oklahoma. Our work covers policy, building codes, high performance buildings, and local government. And as you can see, we have a variety of different people that are members of this organization. So a little bit about the City Efficiency Leadership Council. What is it? It's a collaborative network of Texas cities, school districts, and other government entities engaged in partnership and sharing of resources and effort to expand the adoption of energy management and best practices in the public sector. And, again, the city is in the name, but you don't have to necessarily be a city to utilize their resources and technical resources for this council. We serve counties, universities, school districts, and also small rural cities. So anyone can join, really, as long as you're a local government, and you can just feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more about the organization or also some of our upcoming programs in the coming year. So I'm going to get right into it, but before we get started, I do want to have a few announcements. We're offering CEUs today, and you must fill out the survey that I send out so you can receive them. And if you have phoned in, please list your phone number so that we know that that's you and so we can connect you with your registration. We also have a chat box, and if you're welcome to put questions in the chat box. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. And also, want to go ahead, and if there's any other announcements, feel free to put them down as well. And today we will also, I'll be dropping the survey in the chat in the closing. So I want to welcome our speakers today. I am a part of the USGBC Central Texas Council, and it's just wonderful that I had the opportunity to meet both David and Nelson through that work. And so they have been putting together and working diligently for many years, and I'm not going to say number, but for furthering green building in Texas and also in the US. David McLean, he's the founder and president of leads MAC CX, a social enterprise initiatives facilitating accelerate deployment of proven best practices that create significant social, environmental, and financial business case cost benefits in our buildings, community, and community infrastructures. MAC CX is the inventor and global aggregator and deployment pathway of impact advocacy tech, as well as the Texas chapter of US Green Building Council as a founding board member. And his bio goes on, and I highly recommend reaching out to him through LinkedIn. He is a really interesting person who has some great experience. I'm looking forward to his presentation, as well as Nelson Spitz. He's the founder and president of Enterprise Real Estate Advisors, a value-add commercial real estate advisory service that specializes in brokerage and leasing services, tax reduction strategies, identification and implementation of incentives and strategic financing, and deployment of innovative technologies that reduce operating costs, increase cash flow, and reduce risks and maximize return on equity. So it's a really great partnership. And with that, I am going to take a moment and stop sharing my screen so we can pull up their presentation. And you all are welcome to unmute yourselves. If you want to discuss a little bit more about your background while I bring out the presentation, you're welcome to.
That's great. I'll start. I'm Nelson Spitz. I'm a native Houstonian, and I graduated from the University of Texas and have been in the commercial real estate industry since I graduated college. And that's back to 1980. So it goes way back. And I grew up in the 70s when we saw a huge boom in commercial real estate here. And I got the bug and wanted to be involved in the business. And so that's where I've spent all of my career, basically the majority from the real estate owner's perspective, developing and acquiring or selling, creating portfolios of commercial real estate. And mostly in single story shopping centers and industrial buildings. But I have been involved in some office development as well. I've been with companies that have developed several larger buildings. And I've always had a passion for the building industry and really the workings of the business. And so I came into an understanding of I guess the green building movement, probably in the last 7 years. And I heard about some financing strategies that were very good for real estate owners to be able to take advantage of on an economic basis. And so I started to promote that idea. The idea was C-PACE financing, and I've been promoting that idea since its inception, and it's making great progress in the market. So David recruited me into USGBC probably about 6 years ago, and we've had a really good synergy and understanding of our perspectives. I bring the real estate owner perspective, and he brings the real estate creator from the creative creating buildings together, architects, engineers, all the whatever it takes to really create a building. So today we're here to talk about and this is the brainchild of David. I give him all the credit. He created an app. Well, he created actually a committee, the Best Practices Committee. And the purpose of that basically was to bring in experts who are willing to share their knowledge and help create synergy among the real estate industry or just all the industries that serve the commercial real estate business. And so basically, I was fascinated to know when I found out that the built environment creates almost 40% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions. And so we have a very big responsibility to address that as an industry. And so there's a few things that are also critical that we're getting into a period, a nexus period, in which the society is really starting to say, hey, we want to know our buildings are safe to enter. We want to know that we're breathing good quality air and that we're not going to get sick coming into your building. Up until a couple of years ago, the minimum standard building was just basically won't kill you, but certainly won't protect you. And David and I had a lot of discussions about that. And so anyway, so when David created this best practices.
Excuse me, Nelson, I just want to verify, can you see the presentation?
Yeah, but I'm sorry, it's going to be a little bit different, but go ahead and move forward with it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyway, so I was just talking about myself a little bit. You can move forward just until we get into some meat. So, so why why is the app created and what is the purpose of it? And the basically reason that the app was created was because we now have a lot of technologies and information that are in the databases that we can actually bring up and know the impacts of some of the improvements that constitute the building systems. And so David has put together a plan that can look at a building standard, just a basic standard, required standard by the city, or whatever standards there are. And then we have best or better, and then best. And we can look at how making improvements are going to, what it's going to cost basically, and what are the benefits of it. So once we can identify the benefits on the social, environmental, and economic basis in real numbers, then we can really make better decisions as to why we should go ahead and make these improvements instead of just go to the lowest first cost. So, and we're trying to connect the dots between how to structure improvements to meet the best needs of the tenants and the occupants, and for health and prosperity and safety, and at the same time create the economic model that makes it very worthwhile to do it. And so that's the purpose. So move forward, please. So I kind of gave you do you want to chime in, David, and talk about the overview of the app?
The next 6 slides talk through that effectively and how to get there. So, basically the app was created to grant equal access to unfiltered transparency and accountability in our built environment ecosystem. So not just for the creators' purposes, I lump the creators into those facility management planners, architects, developers, but also the inhabitants, school children, you, me, and business tenants. Next slide, please. These proven, and here's the crux of this thing. There's proven readily deployable designs, technologies, and policies, which we call best practices, that already exist and could be immediately and equitably deployed to maximize the social, environmental, financial value of our buildings and communities. Next slide, please. We also have thousands of passionate and knowledgeable Texans that know how and want to steward above minimum code, sustainable best practices in all the public and private sector projects. Yet we're not making that happen. Next slide, please. And the reason that is as Nelson spoke to this already, there's a pervasive minimum code, lowest first cost mentality that's preventing the design, construction, and operations of safer, healthier, more efficient, and more prosperous places for us all to live, learn, work, and play. So it was out of frustration that I created the USGBC Texas Best Practices Committee, and then used my knowledge that I have in my firm to create this app to bring a resolution to these items. Next slide, please. So one of the things that is a challenge is the community and building inhabitants are unaware of the personal and business costs they must carry when creators are unable to consistently overcome this lowest first cost minimum code mentality. It's an obstacle, and it's a pervasive one, because only 10% of any of the buildings that we build or have built have any type of what we'll call best practice in them that's over and above this minimum code. So what the app is doing is exposing the full opportunity or the burden then that the inhabitants have to carry because they're in a building or a community that's not adopted these. So the app delivers to everybody the business case awareness and substantiation. So when we say best practice, we really, in the app, we don't consider a sustainable betterment a best practice unless it's been fully vetted through the social, environmental, and financial cost benefits that it brings. Otherwise, it's just greenwashing. And if you think of the app in its simplest terms, this is a BS greenwashing tool. So you can talk about energy efficiency, you can talk about benchmarking. The tool delivers the definitive business case viewed through the lens of social, environmental, financial benefits. Next slide, please. And next slide. So the tool itself is accessible. It's free. Right now it's in Android format. I'll talk about where we're going with it in a minute, but it's accessible either through Google Apps, and you go and type in the USGBC Texas Best Practices app. We don't have a shorter name for that or acronym yet. And it's also available through the USGBCTexas.org website. This is a sample. Next slide, please. This is a sample of the best practices champions. It talks about how to become a best practices champion. And there's lots of Google Play links there to get to the app. If you don't have an Android device, you can go to one of the sample videos that's on our web link, and you can download that, and it walks you through page by page, screen by screen, which I'm going to do here in a minute. And there's more information about the app. You can watch, like I said, it on YouTube and go from there. So before I jump into the next one, it was app functionality. Nelson, is there anything that you wanted to add on what I've just ran through there very quickly?
No, not at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to run into the app functionality, and this is going to run through this very quickly. We're available, Nelson and I, to walk people through the app in detail. So the app functionality, when you download the app, this is the home screen that you're going to see. At the top here, you have USGBC Texas Best Practices app. If you link on that, it'll take you to our USGBC Texas Best Practices webpage where you can learn more about it. We have ad capabilities within the app. Right now, we are focusing mainly on those I guess, entities that have a direct connection to creators and inhabitants in the built environment. So it's very intentional about who we have here because our community is very concentrated. And then you enter the best practices app here. Once you enter here, you'll notice that you have an option of looking at best practices in a school or in an office. And right now the office one is highlighted. Then you can pick the best practice. Each of the best practices that we have in here are compared to the minimum code, lowest first cost, current code as of 2020. And then we provide a better and a best option for each of those. Water efficiency, for example, the better option is 25%, the best options 45%. All of that information, I'll show you how to get to exactly what the better and best are. But you pick the office or school you want to look at and evaluate that best practice. Right now, there's 7 in here. We have 15 more in the hopper that we're going to roll out over the next 6 months. Once you click a best practice, and I'm going to focus on benchmarking here today, the graph will populate down below. It'll show the social, environmental, financial, and total value in dollars of that particular best practice in the better. If you, and 0 is that minimum code, lowest first cost bottom. You click on the best, it brings up the best data. Flipping your phone sideways to landscape mode is a little bit easier to read the data. You have social, environmental, financial, and then the total ad here on how it's displayed. So what do you do with this information, right? So this is data. You don't have to know how to do benchmarking. You don't have to know how to do energy efficiency. You don't have to do daylighting. What we want this app to do is be equally accessible to the professionals that work in this environment every day, but more importantly to the inhabitants of the space, be they a business tenant or a teacher or you and me, to understand the value that come from these best practices. The reality of it is that developers don't build, and I apologize because I have not asked you to go through the screens. So let me just back up a little bit. Next screen, please. So this is our web page. I've been clicking through on my computer because I can't get my computer to click. Next screen, please. This is the advertising space. Next screen, please. This takes you into the app. Next screen, please.
Okay.
Once in the app, the school and the office building are up top. Next screen. Click on the best business or best practice you want to look at here. Benchmarking, it populates the graph below. Next screen. And gives you the benefits in social, environmental, financial, and total in dollar amounts. Next screen. All compared to the lowest first cost minimum code that could be possibly created. Next screen. You can click the best. It brings up more data. Next screen. The landscape mode. Next screen. Social. Next screen. Environmental. Next screen. Financial. Next screen. Total. Next screen. New opportunities. So I apologize for that. What you got to see it twice. So next screen, please. So what's happening? So there's been some significant changes. Nelson alluded to that. We're at a nexus here. We've gone from what is the cost of sustainability to what it's worth. We've gone, should we do sustainability? That's gone to how should we do sustainability? And we've now we're asking, how do we compare and trade off designs or strategies quickly and consistently? Next screen, please. So at the back end of all this data is a lot of deep dive economic analysis and modeling that I've done to populate this. So you're seeing the results of all of this project impacts and co-benefits put through peer-reviewed literature. Evaluations are assigned. The cost-benefit outcome is created, and that's what you're seeing in the app. Next slide, please. So now you can start comparing one best practice to another best practice. So if you're going to spend $500,000 doing energy efficiency and $500,000 doing benchmarking, which is not that expensive, by the way, you look, compare better to better, they're going to start showing up in the graph space below. Next slide, please. Turn this sideways, you can notice a significant difference in how a energy efficiency project populates the social, environmental, and financial buckets versus benchmarking. And in the app for benchmarking, we've in the office building, we've benchmarked a 10% energy savings for that. The better is 10% energy savings. We're also benchmarking water 25% for the better, and we're monitoring particulate matter. In the best, we're monitoring the same energy savings and water and particulate, but we're also monitoring ventilation and comfort in that benchmarking deal. So if we, next slide, please. So if we just compare the energy side of this, it's obvious that the social value or the value to the inhabitants of tenant business of making their employees healthier, more productive, increasing retention, lowering absenteeism, energy efficiency really doesn't have any impact on that. And even when we look at this, next slide, please. All we ever talk about is the financial payback, and we don't talk about the burden that's removed from the community. Next slide, please. So this environmental impact is accumulation of the carbon that's removed from the community as well as the pollution impact on the community. So whenever we do an energy upgrade, typically all we talk about is a straight financial payback, but we can quantify the impact or the burden that we're removing from the community, because we know how to calculate the amount of carbon that's produced, the particular types of pollution, because we know what plants are producing that electricity, and we can calculate that into a healthcare cost and a cost of carbon. Next slide, please. And like I said, there's no impact internally to those social things that I already spoke about. Next slide, please. Conversely, if we look at the benchmarking, financially, benchmarking, this was 10% energy efficiency. The energy efficiency one I just looked at was 20%. So you would expect the financials half. Next slide, please. The environmental impact, obviously, the burden that you remove is going to be less, so that's going to be half. But next slide, please. But just benchmarking or making the filtration better has a huge impact on the business productivity, the healthcare costs. You lower healthcare costs, you improve retention, you decrease absenteeism. All of those are orders of magnitude above what the energy savings are, because that's where most of the money is being spent by a tenant business. Now, next slide, please. So why are we just making energy decisions and not other decisions in this venue? Well, the reality of it is the way the built environment has progressed to this point, the building owners have been unable to sell the benefit that comes to the tenant business or the school children, whoever's in the building. They've been unable to, one, quantify it. These tools weren't readily available like they are now, but they also, were driven by that lowest first cost mentality. Now there's a push to do energy efficiency. Monies can be spent a little bit differently if we have conversations with the tenant business up front versus a core and shell building that potentially could be flipped. So there's a bunch of, I'll call them institutionalized obstacles in the way that we build and lease buildings. The app was developed to expose these opportunities, the missed opportunity. That $7.4 million on the left of social benefit is the business's burden. If they are in a minimum code building, they will be less prosperous to the tune of $7 million. That's what makes real change. Next slide, please. So financially, that rolls out because it's just energy efficiency. Next slide, total. You can see that which best practice you deploy has a huge impact on what's going to happen inside of the building. So that was a micro. Next slide, please. So what I just showed you was inside one office building, 1,500 employees in Houston, Texas, using all of the energy and production data from there and the salary and benefits of that office building. But you can take this same process, and the process is an accounting process, an economic analysis process called triple bottom line cost benefit analysis. And I know it sounds sexy when I say it, but the reality of it is that it is an approved accounting process that looks at those three things that I talked about. And like I said, it's not a proven best practice to us in the app unless we are evaluating the social, environmental, and financial benefits. San Antonio is going through a benchmarking process, as is the city of Houston, where I live and am on those benchmarking groups. So we have done a detailed triple bottom line cost benefit analysis here. And if you look at this data, it's busy. That for every $1 that they spend, and all of this graph is talking about is the energy savings, the financial side of it. If you look at this, for every dollar that a business spends, you're going to gain $4.78 back, or that's $1.6 billion of savings financially. But here's the environmental side: $316 million worth of carbon emissions are avoided. That's a burden you're taking off of the community. I'm not going to get into climate change and all of those things, but we have to account for this. Just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. Now that we can quantify this, we can start having real conversations around what this is. So in addition to the 316 millions of carbon emissions, we also have $700 million of air pollution reductions. That's $70 million of air pollutants is directly impacting our community. So by not benchmarking buildings, we are effectively causing our community to be $70 million less healthy. We are causing our community to have to deal with $316 million more in carbon emission impacts. Next slide, please. But what was not in that analysis was the social impact. Now, I think most of you on this call would agree that when we do benchmarking and we start measuring energies, there are some other co-benefits that come along with that. I've been crawling around buildings for the last 30 years, working with everything from architects to building facility managers. And the reality of it is when you start measuring energy, you start changing filters properly, you actually clean cooling coils, you do, make the control system control better so that you don't have huge swings. People become more comfortable. Air quality gets better. You control the outdoor air ventilation. All of these things are easily modeled within this. So what we did is we took a 1% filtration benefit, a 1% ventilation benefit, and a 1% comfort benefit, and modeled those on the social side. So this impact that we're showing here is the impact to the tenant businesses. These are businesses affecting 600,000 people in San Antonio. So if you look at this next slide, please. So if you look at this from the health perspective, that's $6.59 per square foot of benefit. That's $1.5 billion, by the way, over the 30-year study up to 2050. Next slide, please. That equates to each year saving $85 per person. I know $1.5 billion is a hard number to get your head around, but when you take that number divided by 600,000 over 30 years, that's $85. We can substantiate that in our modeling relatively easily for those co-benefits that we get when we benchmark. Next slide, please. So productivity, $2.2 billion. That equates to $9.43. Next slide, please. But that is only a 0.3% increase in productivity, right? So these are very conservative numbers. Most EPA data shows that benchmarking increases productivity anywhere from 7 to 15%. All I've modeled here is 0.3% over this analysis. So very easily, we can talk about the co-benefits of benchmarking on a macro scale, on a community scale, with numbers that actually carry real benefit to the inhabitants of the buildings. And I'm just talking commercial facilities here. So from a municipality's perspective, why would you not be talking about this? This impacts the ability for businesses to be in your city and to be more prosperous. They're more prosperous because guess what? You have mandatory benchmarking in place. That means that they have to report the energy efficiency that they have. That then in turn gets all of these other co-benefits that come to a business. So if you're a business, if you're a city, and you're trying to attract businesses to your community, one of the talking points about benchmarking is, guess what? You're going to be a minimum of 0.3% more productive. What does that mean to your business? And we can get down, as we did in the office building, to the micro deal. So before I get there, Nelson, anything else you want to add to that? You're on mute, Nelson.
No, that was a very good description of the impacts in very small incremental changes. So we really, what we're seeing right now is like the SEC just came out with a requirement, or at least a proposal to require all public companies to report on their climate performance, and which is putting outward pressure on all the businesses that occupy space for being able to actually report their how they're affecting the ecology. And so this is a great tool to be able to help them along to demonstrate the actual performance and how their companies are making a difference. So that's really
great. Thank you. All right, next slide, please. So connecting the dots. Next slide, please. So within the app, back into the app interface. There you go. Thank you. up here on, I don't know what you call this, up in the menu section. So next, you click that. Next slide, please. You see this interface. Next slide, please. And if you click on the best practices, next slide, please. It takes you to all of the best practices that we have on the front end that we saw earlier. Next slide, please. Click one of these best practices. We're going to walk through daylighting here as an example. Next slide. All right, there we're good. We're good. Stay there. So we click on the daylighting. It tells you the what the better minimum code is, the capital cost improvement that you have for each of these for the school and the offices. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And next slide. And so each of these best practices, we are creating what we call companion presentations. These are presentations that talk in more detail about what daylighting is. So if you don't know what daylighting is, this is kind of a intermediate explanation of what daylighting is, why it's important. And the video also goes into a lot more detail in the back end analysis of how this all breaks out in the big buckets of social, environmental, financial dollar costs, where those numbers actually come from. Next slide, please. So the about page, oh, we went a little bit too far. There we go. Thank you. So you hit the about page is going to take you to a whole lot of more input data on where we get all of this information. And all of this information is transparent. If you want to know the methodologies that were used, that we want to make sure that there's buy-in on this. And this tool is really the gateway to more detailed custom analysis for your individual site. But it starts to give you an order of magnitude of what a best practice will do with respect to any environmental social governance program that you have, or supporting other initiatives, be they a design, a technology, or a policy, right? So next slide, please. So we already said that it identifies these practices, but then what? So you know what to do. And I already said earlier, there's thousands of passionate professionals out there. A lot of them make up members of USGBC Texas. And when I envisioned making the committee, it was to bring together those professionals that wanted to work with other members to help them on board to the success of the superpowers that they have, because they figured out how to do it. And maybe just energy efficiency, they're really good. They figured out how to have those conversations. How can they mentor others? So to become a best practice champion, these are members of USGBC Texas who have agreed to share those superpowers and help others emulate their success. They also are agreed to share this with Texas school systems and with community-facing nonprofits. Next slide, please. If you click on the committee tab, next slide, please. It brings up the list of best practice champions. Next slide, please. Click on one of those. This is me. Next slide, please. And it brings up who I am, what I do, what my superpowers are, and it links you to our website where the whole database, you can access this. Now, to access our database, you have to be a member of USGBC Texas. That's $65. Or if you're a school system or a community-facing nonprofit, you speak to our executive director and you can get access to these people free. Next slide, please. So there's the link. And next slide, please. That takes us to the database. You can search by name, by superpower. Next slide. And we're back to the interface. And that is it. That's the presentation. Nelson, anything that I missed? Oh, still on mute.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you, Nelson. Say again. Oh, we're having some technical difficulties.
I'm sorry. Been having a technology problem earlier. So But no, since you were basically the creator of this, you understand and presented it very well. So I just had a few things I just wanted to add on to why is this, important today. And that is that, in my opinion, we're finding that the ESG conversation is becoming very important in this society. I didn't even know what ESG was 3 or 4 years ago, but it's becoming a very important discussion in society. And but a lot of people don't really know what tools to really bring about visualization of results. So this is why this app and this program is so important right now to be able to inform the people that are wanting to know how to get this data. So that's just what I want to add.
Okay, thank you. I would like to plug that we just launched a Gofundme campaign to take this app to the next stage. Right now it's an Android only. We want to get it on iOS and Windows platform. We also want to be able to, in addition to the schools and office building, we want to add a community tab, and we want the best practices to be able to be what's the word, categorized or sorted by design best practice, technology best practice, and policy best practice. So those are some of the things that we want to add to this. We also want to add the capability when someone comes in here and looks at what a best practice is, tallying up the benefits that we're able to show, or we have shown each quarter to users of the app. And it's significant. It's billions of dollars in potential betterments to our community. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, David and Nelson. So one of the questions is the increase in productivity due to lowering utility costs and the cost of goods sold?
So no, lowering the cost of utilities doesn't increase the productivity of your employees, right? So that it does not. But we do a lot of things at the same time, right? The best thing that the app can do is help you understand, well, if we do energy efficiency, guess what? We can do energy efficiency by doing things like making HVAC controllability better and do lighting controllability better. This gives people more comfortable position. It actually makes them more productive, makes them healthier. So in addition to doing energy efficiency a little bit differently, we actually also increase the opportunity for the inhabitants to be healthier and more productive. So, looking at how to use the best practices for the amount of money that you have is what I do with MCMAC CX every day.
Thanks. And do you all have performance kind of measures and how many people have downloaded this app so far?
We don't, right? So this is another thing we want to add to this. And to be honest with you, because I use Android, I made it Android, but most of the people in the creator world use Apple. So we need, so we've gone out for GoFundMe total $150,000. You can either be a founder of this app and have your name all over it and help us move this forward in the built environment ecosystem, or we're also looking to have potentially, if you want to be a branding partner and have your logo and stuff on the app for the next 2 to 3 years, we have $50,000 buckets, but we're getting, people come in at, $20,000, $40,000, and we just started this thing. We're just really, rolling out what we need to do. But we got lots of things we want to do with the app. We know that having this information makes you a better informed consumer, but also makes you gives you the ammunition you need to talk about things that you haven't been able to talk about before, right? That's the important part of this. We want to move the deployment of best practices to, and business will jump the public sector. Codes and standards will not keep up with the businesses as ESG rolls out and people understand the benefit of these best practices, which will be a nice thing for, Spear and all of us that advocate for better codes and standards, for just actually just get them enforced, the ones that we have. When you show the business side of this, that's a huge advantage to hiring inspectors and doing those types of things. And that's where I work with communities, is to help them communicate this advantage.
Do you currently have any partnerships with local governments at this time?
Sure. So I'm working, so we've been working with San Antonio on the app. We went out for a grant. We didn't get it. We weren't successful. It was our first one. We got a lot of feedback on this. So we want to have that municipality tab in there. So municipalities typically deal with policy, right? We can put this triple bottom line lens on a policy, and like I did here with benchmarking, there's benchmarking is a policy, but it's also uses technology to get there, right? So without the policy part, we don't move the standards and codes very well. The design and technologies are well documented within the school and the office part, and overlap. I can do benchmarking, but most people don't do benchmarking unless they're forced to do it. I say that good portfolio managers use Energy Star Portfolio Manager to keep track of all their stuff, but they don't even understand the co-benefits that they're getting, and they're not able to sell this. So I'm working with them to help expose that true benefit that they're getting.
And do you foresee being able to utilize the best practices app actually from, since it's Android, is there an opportunity to actually use it from a computer? Since some of this visually would be great to be able to utilize it from a desktop.
Yeah, so that's why we've gone out for the Gofundme, right? So iOS and Windows. Windows, when I say Windows, I mean from a PC to be able to look at this. But let me make this very clear. These are static models. I've taken a very specific office building in Houston, Texas, and a middle school in Houston, Texas, used the energy weather data, power production information, salaries, all of those things to make those static models. They then form the basis of being able to compare one best practice to another. To get into the full detailed custom analysis requires more detailed information, and that's what I do for my clients, my developers, and my cities and that sort of stuff. So, but we want to get this information out, so at least people can say, well, what's a daylighting? Why should I care about daylighting, right? So you can say, well, here's the benefit it gives to me as a business or as a school if I'm trying to have my kids in a good learning environment. So you don't have to know how to do daylighting to understand what the benefits are, right? This is the deal. And we don't have to learn a green rating system. You just have, because it's all in dollars, right? It's all in dollars, no green rating systems. Now, I do sustainability consulting, but I do this first because I get buy-in. What's important to you? Why do you care about this? Let's monetize it. And then let's find a rating system that actually is pretty close to that. And then guess what? The client wants to keep all of those benefits, and the rating system is kind of like a plus, right? So instead of the other way around, you're cramming them into a checklist. It's never felt good for me, and I know it's never felt good for my clients. It's very complicated. But when you go to the end results, what the performance is going to be, and you put that in dollars and cents, they're like, okay, that's what I want. I want to do this best practice. I want to do that. So it's a flip on. We know how to do this. I guess it's that frustration. You may hear that in my voice, but it's just, there's so much talent out there doing great things every day, but it's all one off. It's just an anomaly, I'll call it. It's not consistent because we haven't proven the business case. Let's prove the business case. Let's do that, consistently. And guess what? Policy will follow.
In your app, does it demonstrate regarding if you do increase your code ordinances to the current one, does it demonstrate those values? And do you have the methodology behind it?
Yeah, so in the app, it doesn't specifically, our hope is that when we get to the municipality tab, we can look at, we'll get to things like, let's go from 2015 IECC to 2000 whatever IECC, and let's compare how that impacts a building. Because we can do that, right? Here's how much the energy efficiency increases. Here's the impact on commissioning. Here's the impact on how much more stringent the controls are over the building. Everyone, if it is a design or technology or policy inside a building or a community, right? We do this same analysis for low impact design, because guess what? We can monetize carbon sequestration of the trees and plants that you have. We can monetize biodiversity. We can monetize the water pollution, air pollution, all of those things on a design basis we can put into that development. I'm working with municipalities. I can't say who they are, but to develop green building standards around this justification. And that they can use then to go forward to get funds to actually implement this and show the businesses the value of this, even though they can't code-wise make it mandatory. They can come up with an opportunities to make an imagination zone or something to say, if you do this, here's the co-benefits, better carbon sequestration, the water doesn't sheet off, better embodied carbon, use these type of things. Those are the type of help that municipalities can give to developers. And if developers see the business case for it, and they have to, and they will have to, as the ESG spotlight and transparency and accountability comes on them, they will have to do that. So this is the gateway into understanding where the most benefits comes from your dollar, but then also you move forward into these custom analysis that help shape codes and policies that have at their basis the business case. Then businesses will want to do it. You won't have to have that fight. I don't know if any of you have, but I'm involved in a lot of policy implementation deal where I get a lot of pushback from industry because they don't see the business case for it. They just see it as another regulation that's going to make them less profitable, because we're only talking in one dimension typically. And so,
well, I'm very excited about this. I hope that more agencies utilize this to move business decisions forward. Before we close, I do want to just, with this being recorded in April and Earth Day is actually tomorrow, is there anything that you all want to state as a takeaway before we close?
Well, my background right now is EarthX, so I'm up here as a presenter with USGBC Texas, and I'm also here as a co-founder of the Texas Sustainable Business Network, and I'm here for the Capital X conference. So, it's happening. We don't, like I said earlier, we don't have to say, do we need to do sustainability anymore? People are like, okay, I got it. How do we do sustainability? And that's really where this is the start of. The Best Practices app is the greenwashing BS indicator, because if you don't look at the social, environmental, and financial aspects of this, and there's an emerging equity part of this also, which we can quantify and will eventually, then you're not actually talking about the real opportunity. You're just greenwashing. So I'll leave it on that.
Okay, I'll just say a couple of things that cities tend to move a little bit forward on these things quicker than private enterprise, because a lot of times they have a longer term horizon of ownership and service. But right now, it's been determined that 80% of investors intend to incorporate some ESG into their strategies by the end of 2023. And so a whole lot of eyes are becoming on what's being done and how to do it better. And the results for people that are doing it are creating better assets that are better performing and more valuable. So it's a win-win for the people that take it on all the way around. So it's a great timing to be involved in this.
Agreed.
Well, if you can see my screen, I want to say thank you to David and Wilson for their time today, especially with technical difficulties, and as well as with the great background you have there, David. So if you want to see this presentation again and do a deeper dive, you can go to the Sphere YouTube channel. It will be uploaded there. And then we have a couple of upcoming events. 2 of them are for local governments only, but they're roundtables. One specifically follows code, and upcoming code with a solar as well as EV. And then the second one is a focus on benchmarking and really utilizing Energy Star and the recognition you can get from it. So we'll have 2 presenters who have won the EPA's Leadership Award from in the San Antonio region. So we're pretty excited about that. Again, thank you all. And I hope that you have a wonderful day and celebrate Earth Day or Earth Month, as you like to look at it. And thanks again for your time on this Thursday.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you.